My name's Owen, and I'm 33. If you asked my father who the future of our family was, he'd answer before you could finish the question. Dylan, obviously. He's my younger brother by 2 years, and he's been Dad's golden boy since we were kids. It started small. Dylan got a new bike while I got a second-hand one to build character. He got piano lessons. I got chores. He got praise for C's. I got lectures for A-minuses. I used to think I was imagining the favoritism. Maybe I was just sensitive, you know? But eventually, the pattern was too glaring to ignore, especially when the family business got involved. My dad owns a small chain of hardware stores. Not flashy, not tech-savvy, just sturdy, dependable places that have kept our family afloat for decades. Growing up, I always assumed that one day, I'd be part of that. I worked in those stores from the time I was 15. I learned the inventory system, managed deliveries, handled customers, even negotiated supplier contracts when I was barely out of college. I put in the time because I believed I was being trained to one day inherit part of it, maybe even take it over. That illusion shattered at 28, the day Dad called a family business meeting. I remember the way he said it, too. I've got big plans, boys. We sat at the old kitchen table, me, Dylan, and Dad, while Mom floated around pouring coffee like everything was normal. Dad looked straight at Dylan and said, "You'll be the face of our future, son." He turned to me briefly, gave me that generic half-smile, and added, "Owen, you'll still have a role. Of course, you're great with your hands." My role, it turned out, was running a remote supply shed they'd been using for storage. It was on the edge of town, behind the old lumber yard, barely functioning. Broken heating, flickering lights, a cracked window that never got fixed. Meanwhile, Dylan got the downtown storefront, newly renovated, polished floors, glass walls, a fresh logo, and a team of employees I had helped interview but was now expected to support from afar. I wish I could say I fought back, that I stood up and made some impassioned speech. But I didn't. I swallowed the insult like I always had. I nodded, muttered something about whatever helps the business, and got in my truck. Then I drove to that damn shed and sat on an overturned bucket for 20 minutes, just staring at the moldy walls. That first year was awful. Dylan wasn't just incompetent, he was arrogant. He had no idea how inventory worked. He mismanaged orders, botched delivery schedules, and overspent on marketing gimmicks that didn't bring in a single new customer. And every time something went wrong, Dad called me. "Owen, can you check on Dylan's numbers? Owen, can you run an emergency delivery? Owen, do you know why Dylan's store is reporting losses?" I did everything they asked. Every late-night run, every financial patch-up, every system fix. I didn't even complain when they forwarded Dylan's bills to the main account I was managing. Meanwhile, my shed, my actual workspace, was falling apart. I worked out of a folding chair, had to plug in space heaters in the winter, and fought off a rat infestation with homemade traps. I was furious, but I still showed up. Because deep down, I wanted them to see me. I thought maybe if I just kept proving my worth, someone would finally notice. But they never did. 2 years in, Dylan pivoted. He said the hardware business was too blue-collar and decided he wanted to launch a lifestyle brand, Rustic Urban. He convinced Dad to fund a line of home decor products, reclaimed wood shelves, iron pipe fixtures, mason jar chandeliers. He rented out a warehouse and hired some of his college buddies as designers. Dad pulled thousands from the main business account to cover the costs. I wasn't even told. I found out when I logged into the company budget and saw a line item labeled Innovation Investment. When I asked Dad about it, he said, "It's Dylan's project. You wouldn't get it, but this is how businesses grow, through bold ideas." I almost laughed. Bold ideas? The man who needed help operating a label printer was launching a product line? But again, I said nothing. I got back in my truck and drove to my rust-covered shed. And that's where it finally happened. That night, I stared at the water stains on the ceiling and just broke. Not loudly. Quietly. The kind of breaking that feels like a long sigh. I sat there and realized, for the first time, that I didn't want their recognition anymore. I didn't want the family business. I didn't want to keep proving anything to people who had already decided who I was. I wanted to build something of my own. So I did. I started with small repairs. Furniture restoration. I used salvage wood from the back lot and made a few rustic coffee tables. I listed them online under a generic name, Shed & Sons. No mention of the family, no photos of me. Within weeks, orders trickled in. People liked the authentic, raw look. I reinvested every dollar into better tools. Then I upgraded the shed with my own money, new lighting, insulation, ventilation. I hired one part-time helper, then another. By year 2, we had to move out of the shed and into an actual workshop. By year 3, we had a wait list. And while all this was happening, Dylan's rustic urban burned through cash like it was kindling. His friends bailed when the profits didn't come fast enough. Suppliers got tired of late payments. Customers complained about warped shelves and poor finishes. Dad kept covering for him until he couldn't. The flagship store downtown closed. The warehouse lease expired. And the family business? It started folding in on itself. Because everything they'd built was tied to Dylan's idea of success. I didn't gloat. Not openly. But I also didn't bail them out. One afternoon, I got a call from Dylan. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year at that point. He sounded unusually humble, tired, even. "Hey, man," he started. "I've been following what you've been doing. Shed and Sons, right? You built something really cool." I didn't say anything. "I was thinking," he continued, "maybe there's a way we can partner. Combine our ideas. Bring the family name back strong, you know?" I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I let that silence hang in the air for a solid 10 seconds. Not out of spite. Just to feel it. For once, I wanted Dylan to sit in the quiet that I'd lived in for years, the kind that grows in the spaces between being overlooked and being underestimated. Eventually, I said, "Come by the shop tomorrow. We'll talk." The next afternoon, he showed up in a car I recognized. It used to be Dad's. A fancy black sedan that Dylan had borrowed permanently once things went south. He walked in looking a bit thinner, wearing a flannel shirt that still had a tag on it and scuffed boots that were clearly more style than function. He tried to hide how much the shop impressed him. I could see his eyes darting around, taking in the custom equipment, the polished wood finishes, the neatly stacked orders waiting for pickup. But the thing that caught him off guard most was my team, for guys, all younger than me, all focused and clearly proud to work here. He stepped up to the front desk and gave me that classic Dylan smirk, the one he used when he wanted something. "This place looks legit," he said. "Thanks," I replied, leaning against the counter. Took a while. A lot of nights alone in that shed. He chuckled, like that memory was just a funny anecdote now. "Yeah, about that. Listen, I know things got kinda weird between us, but I think we could really build something together. I've got ideas. Marketing, branding, maybe even a showroom. Rustic Urban might have flopped, but the concept still has legs. You've got the product, I've got the vision." I listened. Let him talk. He even pulled out a notebook with sketches, logos, packaging mock-ups, slogans like "Where craft meets cool." It was almost cute, in a delusional kind of way. And then, when he'd finished, I reached into a drawer behind the counter and slid an envelope across to him. He blinked. "What's this?" "Application," I said. "For a junior floor technician. Starting wages on the second page." The room went dead quiet. He looked up, confused. "You're joking, right?" "Nope. You said we'd talk about a partnership." "I did. And this is it. You want to be part of what I built? This is the door. But it doesn't open to a corner office." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I could almost see the moment his pride cracked. He didn't yell, didn't throw the envelope. He just stared at it, like it had personally insulted him. I watched him wrestle with the realization that he wasn't being offered a lifeline. He was being offered a lesson. Finally, he pushed the envelope back. "I'm not scrubbing floors." "Then we're done here." He stood there for another second, probably expecting me to fold, to offer him something more dignified. But I didn't. I just turned and walked back toward the workroom. And he walked out. That night, Dad called. "I heard Dylan stop by," he said, voice cautious. "Said you humiliated him. I offered him a job. He turned it down. He's your brother, Owen. You two need to stick together." "You mean like when he stuck me in a moldy shed while he burned through your money?" There was a long pause. Then Dad said he was trying to innovate. I laughed, sharp and humorless. "He was trying to look important." "That's not innovation. You always take things personally." "No, Dad. I take things seriously. You just never noticed because you were too busy waiting for Dylan to become something he never was." He didn't respond. I could hear his breathing on the other end, slow and heavy, like he was trying to find the right words to bring me back in line. But I was done being manageable. "I'm not bailing you out," I said, before he could start another lecture. "You made your choices. Now you can live with them." I hung up before he could answer. After that, things got quiet. For a while. Then came the knock on my shop door 2 weeks later. It was late, almost closing time, and I assumed it was just a delivery mix-up or maybe one of my guys forgot something. But it wasn't. It was my mother. Now, my mom's always been the peacemaker in our family. The one who smooths things over, avoids conflict, and talks in soft tones even when she's upset. She hadn't said much during the past few years. She'd always stayed just out of the spotlight while the favoritism played out, always telling me, "Your father means well," or "It's just how Dylan is." But that night, she looked tired. Not just physically, soul tired. She stepped inside without a word and held something out to me. It was a manila folder. I took it, opened it, and inside was a balance sheet from the main hardware business. Losses, debt, past due notices, supplier terminations. "They're selling," she said, her voice quiet. "The business. What's left of it? Your father won't admit it, but he's lost everything." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I tried to tell him, she continued. Tried to make him see what you were building. He wouldn't listen. Still won't. She looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw guilt in her eyes. Real guilt. He thinks you'll forgive him. That maybe, somehow, you'll buy the business and bring it back. I stared at her, stunned. He wants me to pay to clean up his mess? She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, just looked down at the floor. Then she added something I wasn't expecting. He put the house up as collateral. Our house. And just like that, the air left the room. Because this wasn't just about pride or favoritism anymore. This was about consequences, real, devastating consequences. I had a decision to make. Let them lose everything, or get involved. But not the way they wanted. Not this time. I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I sat down, folder still in hand, trying to process it all. My workshop, usually filled with the hum of tools and laughter from the crew, felt oppressively silent in that moment. I stared at the numbers on the page, bleeding red from every corner, a spreadsheet of desperation disguised as data, and thought about that moment in the kitchen all those years ago. "You're great with your hands." I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I'd already bled that emotion dry. What I felt now was something colder, something sharper, a sense of clarity that only comes when you've been ignored long enough to become dangerous. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. She looked up. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Because I think you're the only one left who can fix it." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "No, Mom. I already did fix it. My life, my business. I built all of this because of them. Not for them. And certainly not to patch up Dylan's mess." Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. "It's not just about Dylan. Or your father. It's about what's left. About your family's name. About your grandfather's legacy. He started that business with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox." I looked her in the eye, and this time I didn't flinch. "Grandpa gave Dad a business. Dad gave Dylan a vanity project? And you want me to revive a corpse?" She didn't argue. She just looked tired. "I'm not asking you to forgive them," she said softly. "But maybe, just maybe, there's still something worth saving." That stuck with me. Long after she left, long after I shut down the shop and locked up for the night, her words circled in my head like a mosquito I couldn't swat. I sat in my truck for what must have been an hour, staring at that folder again. She was right about one thing. My grandfather had built that company from scratch. And I remembered him. Vividly. A giant of a man with hands like sandpaper and a voice like gravel. He used to bring me to the stores when I was little, let me help him organize screws by size and color while he'd sip coffee from a chip thermos. "Hard work, Owen," he'd always say. "That's the only thing in this life that never lies to you." And now his name, our name, was about to be sold off for parts. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled an all-nighter, pacing, scribbling notes, running numbers, digging up every memory and emotion tied to that business. I thought about what I'd be saving and who I'd be saving it for. By dawn, I had my answer. But before I could make any decisions, I needed to see it. With my own eyes. So later that morning, I drove out to one of the stores. Not Dylan's old flagship downtown, the original one. The first shop my grandfather opened. It hadn't been touched in months. The windows were fogged with grime, the closed until further notice sign hung crooked on the door, and the mailbox overflowed with unopened bills. I pushed the door open. The bell above it gave a weak gingle, like it was coughing up its final breath. The inside smelled of dust and old wood. Shelves stood half-stocked, some sagging under the weight of forgotten inventory. A layer of sadness coated everything. And yet, it felt familiar. It felt like something that could be something again, if someone gave a damn. I spent 2 hours there, walking the aisles, running my hand along the worn counters. remembering where the register used to be before Dylan replaced it with a self-checkout system that never worked right. I even found one of the old shop aprons behind the counter, still folded neatly like someone planned to come back. And in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't doing this for Dylan, or for Dad, or even for the family name. I was doing it for the man who taught me the value of a good day's work. For the teenage version of me who believed in legacy before it was weaponized against him. For the people in this town who still remembered what this place used to mean. And maybe, just maybe, to prove that the real future of this family had been sitting in a rundown shed all along, quietly becoming a force they'd never seen coming. The next day, I made 3 calls. One to my lawyer, one to my accountant, and the third to the bank. But the 4th call? That one I made in person. I walked right up to my father's house, rang the doorbell, and waited. When he opened the door, wearing the same robe he always wore like a badge of old authority, he blinked in surprise. "You're up early," he said, tone wary. "I'm buying the business," I said flatly. He blinked again. "Really? But not from you. I already made the offer to the bank. It's clean, it's legal, and it's being finalized this week. I'm not saving you. I'm salvaging what you threw away." He looked stunned. Wait, you went around me?" I leaned in, voice low and razor sharp. "You gave me a shed, Dad. Remember? Said I was good with my hands. Well, turns out these hands build empires. And now I'm buying the rubble of yours, not as a son, not as a partner, but as your replacement." His mouth opened, then closed. I could see the wheels turning, the bruised ego scrambling for footing. "You're making a mistake, Owen." "No," I said, turning to leave. "You did. Years ago. I'm just the one fixing it." And as I walked back to my truck, I didn't look back. But I knew, deep in my gut, that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I officially signed the papers on a Friday morning. The moment the ink dried, the business was mine. Not a part of it. Not a controlling stake. All of it. The stores, the brand, the debt, the memories good and bad. It came with baggage, sure. A crumbling reputation. Empty shelves. Burned supplier bridges. But it also came with something more important, a foundation. Cracked and neglected, maybe, but one I could rebuild with my own hands. That same day, I called a meeting with what remained of the staff across the locations. Only 12 people showed up. The rest had quit or been laid off over the past few years, casualties of Dylan's vision. Some of the people in that room looked wary. A few looked bitter. But most just looked tired. Tired of waiting for someone to lead with a brain instead of a brand logo. I stood at the front, hands in my pockets, and told them the truth. "I'm not here to pretend the last few years didn't happen," I said. "And I'm not here to blame anyone. I'm here because I still believe in what this place can be. We're not going to turn it around overnight. But if you're with me, we're going to build something real again. Not trendy, not flashy, just solid, like it used to be." A slow silence followed. Then a nod. Then another. And by the end of the hour, every single person had agreed to stay. We started small. Repaired the original shop first. Repainted the walls. Rewired the lights. Scrubbed the windows until you could see clear through to the back wall. I rehired our old inventory manager, Rosa, who hadn't worked there since Dylan fired her for being too negative. She cried when I called her. Showed up the next morning with a thermos and a clipboard, ready to rebuild the database from scratch. The first real test came when we reached out to our old suppliers. I personally drove 3 hours to meet with the biggest one, Henderson Tools, because they'd been burned the worst by Dylan's unpaid invoices. I walked into their warehouse office with a check and an apology. The manager, a gruff guy named Larry, looked at me like I was holding a dead rat. "You think this makes up for 3 years of BS?" he said. "No," I replied. "I think it earns me 5 minutes." We talked for 20. By the end of it, I had a probationary agreement and a handshake. The next few months were a blur. We ran bare-bones promotions, hosted repair workshops, started a Tools for Teens program that donated used tools to local schools with shop classes. I posted regular updates online, not some curated, influencer-style marketing, but real photos of us fixing the place up, staff laughing over broken shelves, before and afters that actually meant something. And people responded. Customers trickled in. Then they walked out with bags in hand. Then they came back and brought friends. By month 6, we were turning a small profit. By month 9, we were able to restock all 4 locations. And by the 1-year mark, we weren't just surviving, we were growing. The old business that had once been left for dead was not only breathing again, it was running. As for Dylan, He did take that job application home, apparently. According to Mom, he left it on his nightstand for weeks. He never filled it out. I wasn't surprised. But he did show up again, this time unannounced. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when he walked into the original store, the one Grandpa had built. He looked thinner than before, more worn down. The swagger was gone. He wandered around for a bit, browsing like a customer. No one recognized him. He eventually made his way to the counter where I was checking out a couple buying paint. He waited quietly until I was done. Then he stepped forward. "This place looks alive." I didn't say anything. He glanced around. "I heard you're doing pretty well." I nodded. "We are. I didn't think you'd actually pull it off. That's why you were never part of it." He winced, just slightly, but didn't argue. He took a deep breath. "I came to say something." "Go ahead." "I messed up. I let the family name go to my head. Thought I could shortcut my way to success." "You didn't just mess up, Dylan. You got other people fired. You nearly put Mom and Dad on the street. You burned everything down and walked away while I picked up the ashes." He looked down, ashamed. "I know." We stood there for a while. The rain outside pattered softly on the windows. A customer walked past us, dragging a bag of mulch behind them. "I'm not here to ask for anything," Dylan said finally. "I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. You deserved better. You were the future of this family. I just wasn't man enough to admit it." That caught me off guard. But I believed him. Maybe not all at once. Maybe not completely. But I saw in his face the thing I had waited years to see: humility. Genuine, unpolished, hard-earned humility. "I hope you find your own way," I said, finally. He nodded. "I'm trying. I got a job working warehouse logistics over in Westfield. Pays crap, but it's a start." "Good," I said. "Start's what matters." He lingered for a second, then offered a hand. I took it. And that was it. No grand reconciliation. No dramatic hug. Just a quiet understanding between two brothers who had finally stopped pretending. A few weeks later, my parents showed up. They walked in together, hand in hand, like they were stepping into a time machine. Dad looked older, slower. His once firm handshake now trembled slightly when he reached across the counter. "I came to see what you've done," he said. I didn't answer. I just gestured toward the shop floor, fresh stock, smiling staff, a young couple debating between two types of wood stain. The sound of drills and hammers echoed faintly from the back room. He watched it all in silence. "I was wrong about you," he said finally. I raised an eyebrow. "About which part?" He gave a tired smile. "All of it." There was no apology beyond that. But I didn't need one. Because this was the apology, the admission, the effort, the fact that they came here instead of calling or sending word through Mom. That was enough. We didn't become close again. We didn't start having Sunday dinners or reminiscing over old photo albums. But over time, things settled. The wounds stopped bleeding. The calls became less awkward. The silence less sharp. And as for me, I kept building. A year after I bought the business, I rebranded. Not to erase the past, but to honor the future. I called it Red Pine Tools, after the tree that once stood outside Grandpa's first shop. We planted a new red pine in front of the flagship location. Customers donated time and money. Someone carved Grandpa's initials into the trunk. On the anniversary of the relaunch, I stood beside the tree, watching families browse the aisles. Kids running between the paint section and the PVC pipes. A man asking Rosa if we carried live Edgewood. My crew loading up a flatbed with freshly milled oak. And I realized something. The future of the family was never supposed to be flashy. It was supposed to be honest. That's what I built. That's what I'll leave behind.